Test, test.
Hear you loud and clear.
Cold in here.
I got it. I don't know what it is.
I know I always Kevin Ellerberger from the East I always give him a hard time because he has no case of this. Just on the tongue.
Which one? Which one do I pick again?
So you're gonna pick this. This one.
Okay.
We change this one more no space, no space.
Morning. Morning.
Hi.
Doing well, thanks.
It doesn't connect automatically.
It will next time.
Okay.
We put it over there because we got missing it in the back.
Okay.
So we have two of them.
Okay. I'm good.
You here?
6 people on the call. Too many people.
Okay, gang.
Okay, all right, we can hear you. Thanks.
Great.
All right, good morning. Today is March 25th, 2026. Welcome to the Maryland Public Service Commission's administrative hearing. Today is Maryland Day, so happy Maryland Day to all of you. For those of you who might be a little confused, I am not Kumar Barve. Our chairman is joining us today remotely. Mr. Chairman, are you able to hear us? We are not hearing you.
Yep, I'm here, and I and my torn meniscus thank you.
Well, hopefully only one of you will return. Well, I don't believe we have any additional items that we need to talk about today other than a couple of announcements. We have some new employees to introduce. We have Mr. Brett Bave. Is he here today? Oh, there he is. Mr. Bave is joining the Commission as a regulatory economist in the Commission's Electricity Division. He brings a strong background in energy policy, regulatory analysis, and climate strategy. Mr. Bave holds bachelor's degrees in political science and Chinese language and culture from St. Mary's College of Maryland and a master's degree in environmental management from Yale University. He has experience across federal government, nonprofit, and state regulatory settings, including work with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the World Resources Institute. His work has focused on energy markets, rate design, and decarbonization policy, and he has contributed to regulatory proceedings, including rate cases and cost allocation analysis. So please join me in welcoming Brett to the Commission. Thank you. And certainly not to be outdone, you can also welcome me and join me in welcoming Ms. Ksenia Husak to the Commission. There she is. She is also, applause in advance, yes. Ms. Husak is a regulatory economist in the Energy Analysis and Planning Division. She also brings a strong background in energy policy and data analytics. She has a bachelor's degree in accounting and finance from the University of Washington and a master's degree in public policy and information science from the University of Michigan. She most recently served as manager of data science and analytics at Trace International and previously worked with Cadeo Group on utility planning, energy efficiency programs, and regulatory analysis. Please also join me in welcoming Ms. Husak to our organization. And last but not least, I won't ask you to save your applause to the end. It is my pleasure to welcome back Mr. Kevin Zong. Is Kevin in there? Oh, Kevin, no? Well, yeah, all right. Well, he's on his way back. We will, I guess we'll get to leave that one for Chairman Barve to read next week. But we are looking forward to seeing him when he gets here. Hopefully he doesn't have anything on our agenda today. So with that, we have minutes to approve from our March 18th meeting. I believe they've been distributed by our administrative division. Thank you very much. Are there any corrections or modifications to those minutes? Seeing none, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the minutes as presented. We can do it by vote by voice call. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Doesn't seem to be none opposed. The motion carries. So welcome into our consent agenda. We have 5 items on the agenda today. 4 items on the agenda today. The first one is Next Era Energy Services, and they are requesting to cancel their gas supplier license. There's a motion to, I'll make a motion to approve the cancellation request. For item 2, there is Premier Power Solutions LLC. They're also requesting to cancel their electricity and gas supplier license, and I will move at the appropriate time to cancel that request. Excuse me, to approve that cancellation request. For item number 3, Long Green Farms LLC is requesting certification as a renewable energy facility. I will move to approve the application and issue a renewable energy facility ID certification number to direct the applicant to establish a REC account with PJM GATS within 30 days of certification and file an on-site and behind-the-meter generation report with the Commission within 1 week of recording of generation date with GATS, and direct the applicant to notify the Commission within 30 days if the information on which the application is based should change. Item 4 on our consent agenda is Resource Energy Solutions, LLC. It's a notice of upstream ownership change, and I will move that we note the filing. There's no discussion. Seeing none, I will move again to all 4 motions at this time. We'll start with Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoover.
Aye.
Chairman Barvet.
Aye.
And I will vote aye. The motions are approved.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Charles Herbert on behalf of staff. I did want to note that the Premier Power item is a request to cancel both the electric and the gas license. I believe I only heard gas mentioned.
I believe I said both, but we will. Yeah, I said both. Okay. Well, thank you. We'll move on now to our administrative agenda. Item number 5, Global Crossing LLC. Global Crossing Local Services Incorporated. Technical staff.
Good morning, Chair Barve and Commissioners. Alden Manka on behalf of staff. On October 8th, 2025, Global Crossing Local Services, Inc. filed a notice with the Commission of its intent to discontinue voice telecommunications services in Maryland and withdraw the company's PSC Maryland Tariff number 2 and number 3. Global Crossing is authorized to operate as a competitive local exchange company and inter-exchange company in Maryland. Over the past 3 years, the company has taken steps towards reducing its provision of local exchange service in Maryland. On February 6, 2023, the company notified the Commission of its discontinuance of certain voice services for non-residential Baltimore customers, while also stating that it does not serve residential customers. The Commission noted this filing on March 8, 2023. On February 26, 2024, the company proposed to grandfather the services found in its PSC Maryland Tariffs 2 and 3 with tariff pages accepted for filing by the Commission effective April 1, 2024. On February 28, 2025, the company notified the Commission that it was discontinuing voice services, also stating that it will not provide any non-voice local exchange or inter-exchange access facilities and that it does not provide any voice over IP services in Maryland. The company also provided the notice sent to customers stating that they would discontinue service. On October 8, 2025, the company filed the instant notice indicating the company's intent to withdraw its PSC Maryland Tariffs 2 and 3 and the services Tariff 2 and 3, as the services provided in those tariffs have been grandfathered and subsequently discontinued and are no longer offered to customers. As the company will not be providing any voice or non-voice local exchange or inter-exchange services in Maryland, the company no longer needs to maintain tariffs with the Commission. If the company seeks in the future to resume the provision of services that require tariffs in Maryland, it must comply with all applicable tariff or pricing guide requirements. Therefore, staff recommends the Commission note the company's discontinuance of voice telecommunications services in Maryland and cancel the company's operating authority and its PSC Maryland Tariffs number 2 and PSC Maryland Tariff number 3. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the bench? Seeing none, just a clarification question for staff. This is covering items number 5 and 6.
That is correct.
Okay,
The
thank you.
company filed a separate notice for each of their tariffs.
Thank you. Do we have a representative from the company here today?
The company was not able to come.
Okay. All right, thank you. Were there any questions for a representative from the company? Seeing none. Okay, thank you. I will make a motion then to note the company's discontinuance of voice telecommunications in Maryland and cancel the company's operating tariff authority and its PSC Maryland tariff number 2. We'll go by a voice vote. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Sushman.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoover.
Aye.
Chairman Barve.
Aye.
I will vote aye. That's for item number 5. For item number 6, I will also move that we note the company's discontinuance of voice telecommunications in Maryland and cancel the company's operating authority and its PSC Maryland tariff number 3. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Sussman.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoover.
Aye.
Chairman Barve.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Item number 7 is a request for approval of first 5-year decommissioning plan and cost estimate update filed by Spectrum Solar LLC.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Christopher Lowe on behalf of staff. On December 4th, 2025, Spectrum Solar LLC filed its first 5-year decommissioning plan and cost estimate update for its 5.6 megawatt solar generating facility in Prince George's County, Maryland, pursuant to Condition 23 of the CPCN issued in case number 9608. Spectrum also submitted a revised plan on February 20th, 2026 in response to comments from PPRP and staff's data request. Condition 23 requires Spectrum to update its decommissioning cost estimate and corresponding financial assurance every 5 years to reflect inflation and other relevant changes. After review, staff finds that the revised plan is materially improved and presented more complete and conservative estimate of the project decommissioning liability. The revised plan addressed the removal of project equipment, including both above ground and below ground facilities, disposal and recycling of materials, and restoration of disturbed areas. Spectrums also incorporated a 10% contingency, removed estimated solar panel resale value due to uncertainty in secondary market, added permit-related costs, and updated estimate to reflect the current cost data. With respect to the cost, the revised estimate reflects demolition and removal costs of approximately $1,095,838, less an estimated established value of $75,066, resulting in a net decommissioning cost of approximately $1,020,800. Staff finds this amount reasonable for the purpose of financial assurance during this 5-year review period. Accordingly, staff recommends that the Commission approve Spectrum's updated 5-year decommissioning cost estimate and direct the company to file documentary evidence in a docket showing that the financial assurance in the amount of $1,020,800 has been secured. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for our technical staff? Seeing none. Morning.
Good morning, Commissioner. Sandra McLemore on behalf of the Power Plant Research Program. We filed no comments, but we agree with staff and believe that this decommissioning plan should be approved. And today I have with me Mr. Sean Seaman, who's available for any technical questions you may have for PPRP.
Thank you. Any questions for PPRP, Ms. McLemore? Seeing none. Thank you. Morning, Mr. Bugelmans.
Thank you, Chair Barve. Commissioners, David Bugelmans on behalf of Spectrum Solar. We're on the same page with staff and PPRP, but I'm here to answer any questions. Appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. One question, Commissioner McLean.
Morning, sir. Just wondering, did the county have any input into this revised plan, sir?
Not to my knowledge, Commissioner.
Okay.
Any additional questions? All right. Seeing none, I will make a motion that we approve the company's first 5-year decommissioning plan and cost estimate update and direct the company to file documentary evidence that demonstrates that financial assurance in the amount of $1,020,800 has been secured. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoover.
Aye.
Chairman Barve.
Aye.
I vote aye. Our next item, number 8, is the Potomac Edison Company's request to revise tariff pages to implement a Maryland cost allocation method rider.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. DeAndre Wilson here on behalf of staff. I would like to state that staff's comments were consolidated with Potomac Edison, Semeco, and BGE. So our recommendation would include all three companies.
Okay, then why don't I call item number 9 as well? That is Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative Incorporation has also filed a motion to revise their tariff pages to implement a Maryland cost allocation method rider. Item number 10 is Baltimore Gas and Electric Company, Potomac Electric Power Company, and Delmarva Power and Light Company with the same request. I believe all the parties are here today. You don't have to pile up there. We'll just take you as we get to you.
Thank you. On January 31st, 2017, the Commission established the PC44 Interconnection Work Group to develop proposed regulations for Commission consideration, including best practices for residential interconnection processes. While phases 1 through 4 of the work group resulted in prior rulemakings that addressed numerous improvements to Maryland's interconnection procedures and standards, Phase 5 of the work group specifically examined distribution system upgrade cost allocation and evaluated whether Maryland's existing interconnection cost framework remained equitable and aligned with the state's increasing DER penetration. At the conclusion of Phase 5 of the work group, on September 28, 2023, the work group submitted its final report and petition for rulemaking, recommending revisions to COMAR 2050-09 for the purpose of implementing a hybrid cost allocation framework for hosting capacity upgrades. In response to the workgroup's petition, the Commission initiated Rulemaking 81. On November 6, 2024, at the conclusion of Rulemaking 81, the Commission adopted the revisions to COMAR 2050-09, including COMAR 2050-09-06R, requiring electric utilities to submit within 1 year a tariff implementing a hosting capacity upgrade cost, sharing, and allocation methodology. This regulation establishes requirements for both primary and secondary voltage interconnection customers, including proportional allocation of upgrade costs, locational pricing for primary voltage interconnections, separate accumulation of unallocated upgrade costs, annual fee updates, optional administrative charges, and reporting on right-sized upgrades in future rate cases. This regulation became effective December 12, 2024. On December 12, 2025, pursuant to COMAR 2050-09-06 R1 and 2, BGE, PEPCO, and Delmarva, collectively the Exelon Utilities, Potomac Edison, and Semeco each filed revised tariff pages establishing a Maryland Cost Allocation Model, or MCAM, rider. These filings implement proportional allocation of primary voltage upgrade cost, accumulation and recovery of unallocated costs, standardized secondary voltage hosting capacity fees, inclusion of administrative charges, and annual fee update mechanisms. The principal distinction among utilities related to the degree of locational price, the principal distinctions among utilities are related to the degree of locational pricing granularity, fee derivation methodology, administrative charge magnitude, and accounting integration with rate-based recovery. Staff finds that the electric company's proposed MCAM riders are generally consistent with COMAR requirements and Commission policy objectives, However, several areas warrant commission clarification or conditions. First, the electric company's initial MCAM-P or primary hosting capacity fee is set at $0 kilowatts due to insufficient historical data. Staff finds this reasonable for initial implementation. However, utilities must establish clear procedures for developing non-zero hosting capacity fees based on actual upgrade costs. Second, the electric companies indicated that customers cannot independently verify all underlying cost inputs due to proprietary information. Nevertheless, staff finds that utilities must provide sufficient explanation and documentation of charges to ensure tariff compliance and transparency. Third, the electric companies propose to recover net MCAM costs through base distribution rates while offsetting those costs through hosting capacity fee revenues. Staff finds that this structure is reasonable, provided that utilities maintain appropriate accounting separation and avoid double recovery. Additional areas of concern include the consistent implementation of administrative charges, transparent accounting and reconciliation of hosting capacity fee revenues, and the use of forecasting tools such as inflators in a manner that remains tied to the actual cost and subject to reconciliation. In conclusion, staff recommends that the Commission accept these filings for implementation subject to the following conditions. 1. Each utility shall file annual MCAM hosting capacity fee updates in accordance with COMAR 2050-0906 R3 and 4, including supporting work papers and reconciliation of unallocated cost balances. 2. Each utility shall maintain separate accounting records for MCAM-related upgrade costs and hosting capacity fee revenues, and shall demonstrate in future rate cases that accumulated hosting capacity fee revenues are properly credited against rate-based recovery to prevent double recovery. 3. Each utility shall provide annual program reporting summary total hosting capacity upgrade costs incurred, hosting capacity fee revenues collected, unallocated balances remaining, and primary versus secondary allocations on or before May 1st of each year, or on such other date as the Commission may direct for administrative consistency. 4. Each utility shall comply with COMAR 2050-0906 R6 by providing detailed descriptions of right-sized hosting capacity upgrades, including forecasts, assumptions, and engineering justification in its next rate proceeding. 5. Each utility shall, in its next MCAM filing or rate proceeding, provide a detailed breakdown of administrative charge components, demonstrate that such costs are incremental and not recovered in base rates, and confirm that administrative charges do not include an unauthorized return component, unless otherwise approved by the Commission in a rate proceeding. Utilities shall also utilize a consistent methodological framework for administrative charge development. 6. Each utility, and specifically SEMECO, shall provide a detailed description of its accounting and reconciliation process for hosting capacity fee revenues, including tracking by voltage level and customer class, reconciliation methodology, and explanation of how such revenues are applied to offset hosting capacity upgrade costs or otherwise benefit ratepayers or cooperative members as applicable. 7. Utilities utilizing inflation-based adjustments in hosting capacity fee development shall reconcile such adjustments to actual incurred costs in subsequent filings and provide supporting documentation demonstrating such reconciliation, including identification of any resulting over or under collection adjustments. And finally, each utility shall provide in annual MCAM reports a breakdown of unallocated hosting capacity upgrade costs balances by primary and secondary voltage categories, and to the extent practicable, by feeder or locational grouping. Subject to these conditions, staff finds that acceptance of the MCAM rider filings is reasonable, consistent with COMAR 2050-0906R, and in the public interest. Therefore, pursuant to COMAR 2050-0906R, staff recommends that the Commission accept for filing the revised MCAM rider tariff filings of the Exelon Utilities, Potomac Edison, and Semeco, subject to the conditions previously stated, with an effective date of May 1st, 2026, and that the companies be directed to file clean copies of their tariffs.
Thank you. Any questions for technical staff? Commissioner McLean?
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Suchman?
Good morning, Mr. Wilson. Did you have any comments on OPC's filing?
Yeah, so I got an opportunity to look through OPC's comments, and just based on what I understood, my understanding of their filings and what they're requesting. They are requesting that we, or staff or the commission, consider setting a non-zero fee at the onset of these tariffs. In staff's opinion, we will support not having the commission set a non-fee for MCAM because we feel that we want the fees, the non-zero fees, to be associated with real cost. From what we understand, the OPC wants to base this cost or this fee on average 5-year average from previous years, but staff just feels like it's more realistic to set those with realistic costs that we're going to see moving forward rather than present. We feel like they won't be aligned, and in order to maintain alignment with the purpose of the regulations that were set, future costs will be more of an area or a means of basing a fee. And so what we have recommended is that the utilities provide an updated fee or MCAM fee in their future filings, or within somewhere or sometime probably around their annual filings, to then provide some more data or some information as to a non-zero fee rather than setting at the onset.
Right. In that specific recommendation you referenced, that was just in relation to the Exelon Utilities. Is that correct?
Yes, I think Exelon is the only company at this moment that has filed a zero fee.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Suchman?
Morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning.
So, going back to the OPC proposal, I mean, it's sort of my understanding that what you're trying to do is to avoid the situation where the first in time is all of the cost for upgrades are sort of carried by that first in time interconnection, and then you've got free riders sort of for all those who continue to interconnect. And that's what you're trying to fix. So you're trying to avoid the situation where all of the costs are imposed by the first entity that's interconnecting, and everybody else is a free rider, right? That's what you're trying to fix?
Is that what I'm trying to fix?
No,
Or is
that's the point. That's the
regulations?
point of the tariff is to avoid that situation where the first in time is carrying all the cost of interconnection, and then you've got all these free riders coming in after.
The intent of the regulations is to shift what was previously a causer pays model to a beneficiary pays model. And in order to do that, there has to be, the utilities do not have a historical, they have not been tracking these upgraded costs over the past several years. So there's no basis as to
No, but I'm just asking the theory behind this. It had been that that an entity wanted to interconnect, and then all of the costs for upgrading would be shouldered by that entity, and then you'd have all these free riders.
Correct.
So what you're trying to do is you're trying to share the burden.
correct.
Okay. Now the concern I have with, or it seems to me that if it's a zero cost for the first in time, then you could have a situation where it's kind of flipped, where the first one that goes in doesn't have a burden, but then the burden is picked up by those sort of coming in later in the process. So how do we sort of address that problem? I'm concerned that, in fixing the one problem, we're actually creating a new problem.
Indeed. In fact, what you have stated is correct. But with the conditions that staff has set and the intent of the regulations, that will only be for a temporary period. That will only be at the launch of these MCAM models, because we don't have historical data or sufficient historical data to set a price at the initial effective date of this tariff. So we feel that it's best to give the utility some time, set a particular date or a trigger in which these costs, which will be more tied to actual upgrade costs rather than historical data, so that we can then move forward with the intent, or the intent of the regulation will then be effective moving forward. So
And you don't think-
there will be a short period of time at this launch where it's possible, being that this is zero fee, that the initial mover may see a zero fee, and then those that follow may have to pay that cost. But
Okay,
but only
but you don't think that the historical interconnection costs are sort of a proxy for what could be the cost now?
I don't.
Okay, and that would be because
Of the change in there's been a significant increase in the cost of business for utilities and for transmission or any types of upgrades, the work, the type of equipment that's associated. So that wouldn't necessarily reflect moving forward what those costs would be for future upgrades.
okay, but they certainly would be more than zero.
They would be more than zero.
Right, so zero would definitely not reflect the cost of interconnection.
Right, but later on down the line, if we were to set a cost now, we would have to correct it in the future because it wouldn't be aligned with what is actual upgrade costs. So we'll be revisiting this again.
Right, but at least for the first in time DER projects, they will be allocated some amount, some part of the cost, as opposed to zero.
If we were to set something now.
Right. So your conditions, would those conditions apply to all the companies?
Correct.
Okay, and then they would apply for both the S and the P tariffs? Or would they just apply for the P tariffs?
Some of them would apply to the S tariffs, but the two tariffs they're not the same. They accomplish different things, but the most impact that these conditions would apply to is would be the P.
Okay, but you do have some conditions that would apply to the S
Some of
as
these
well.
conditions would apply to S, yes.
Okay, and then OPC in their comments had raised the idea of better incorporating flexible interconnection. So do you think that flexible interconnection is adequately reflected in the tariff proposals?
With the most recent rulemaking that we had with the commission in regards to rulemaking 94, we've first of all, flexible interconnection has always been an option or a tool for utilities to use. With the most recent commission ruling or order and the rulemakings that we just recently had in RM 94, utilities are encouraged, or more encouraged by the commission to implement those tools where applicable. So we expect that these tariffs will have enough flexibility for them to implement those tools as well.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we have, filing made by the Office of People's Counsel, and we have 3 companies. So let's start with the Office of People's Counsel. Thank you, staff.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Mark Bird with the Office of People's Counsel. The purpose of Maryland cost allocation method is primarily to switch from a cause or pays cost allocation method to a beneficiary pays cost allocation method with respect to hosting capacity upgrade costs. And there are many benefits to this approach. The first and foremost is that it more fairly allocates interconnection upgrade costs amongst the beneficiary interconnection customers. OPC's comments on the utilities MCAM tariff filings primarily seek for the Commission to require that the utilities install measures that ensure Maryland's cost allocation method functions as intended, to require fair allocation among interconnection customers under a beneficiary pays methodology, and does not simply become a pathway for shifting costs to ratepayers. The utilities tariff filings that propose to recover unallocated costs from ratepayers in rate cases is fundamentally flawed, and the Commission should require that those proposed provisions from the utilities tariffs be removed. The MCAM regulations specifically require interconnection upgrade costs to be paid by future interconnection customers. For primary voltage interconnections, the regulations require excess hosting capacity upgrade costs to be accumulated in a separate unallocated account and then allocated to future primary voltage interconnection customers through the MCAM tariff. Similarly, at the secondary voltage level, the regulations likewise require unallocated costs to be accumulated in separate accounts and then allocated to future secondary voltage interconnection customers through the MCAM tariff. However, although that is the structure that the Commission adopted, it does not explicitly prevent utilities from seeking to recover unallocated upgrade costs from ratepayers in a utility's next rate case. Thus, without further direction from the Commission, ratepayers could be saddled with paying interconnection upgrade costs that should be paid by interconnection customers. And that is why OPC's position is not just policy preference. It follows from the structure of the MCAM regulations itself. The Commission adopted a beneficiary pays framework, and the Commission should enforce that framework. If a utility wants a broader ratepayer cost support for a hosting capacity upgrade, the regulations already identify a different pathway in the hosting capacity upgrade plan provisions, which require specific justification, explanation of ratepayer benefits and risks, and an explanation of how future interconnection revenues will offset those costs. The Commission should not allow ordinary MCAM balances to bypass that structure and simply migrate to base rates. To the extent that the Commission determines that the MCAM regulations allow recovery from ratepayers despite the express provisions to the contrary, then the main way to protect ratepayers and to have MCAM function as intended is by setting the MCAM tariff rates at levels that ensure full recovery of interconnection costs from interconnection customers. And this means for the Exelon utilities, rates not set at $0. And this means for all the utilities, rates that are accurately developed using transparent, verifiable methodologies that include formulas, rates, inputs, and sample calculations. Another way to protect ratepayers is to minimize the amount of capacity upgrades in the first place by requiring that sizing of hosting capacity upgrades be well justified, and by requiring utilities to develop flexible interconnection policies that enable the use of dynamic operating envelopes. Additionally, the Commission should require that the utilities set up true-up mechanisms that keep track of upgrade costs recovered from ratepayers rather than interconnection customers, and carry over such costs into the next year's MCAM determination process. So ratepayers receive credits if future MCAM fees will later recover the same costs. These guardrails will ensure that MCAM functions as intended rather than inappropriately shifting costs to ratepayers or creating the wrong incentive for utilities to overbuild at the expense of ratepayers. I'm available for any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Any questions for People's Council? Oh, yes. Commissioner Sashman.
So, so your recommendation about doing the average upgrades over a 5-year period sort of reflects the fact that sort of first in time entity will need to bear some of the burden that others will bear as well, and that it may not reflect it may not reflect the actual upgrade costs, but it will certainly reflect them better than zero.
I think, yeah, what you said is correct. We know that there are certain costs to interconnect, and we know that they're not zero, and the point is to not undercollect and then have a situation where the utilities are then using their provisions in the MCAM tariff that say if we have any unallocated balances, we'll recover it from ratepayers. And by setting costs at zero now, that's just a setup for not collecting enough.
Right, you'll always undercollect if it's zero, as opposed to some other number, which, and to the extent that you overcollect, what would happen at that point? That would be returned to the DER?
Yes, what we're asking for is mechanisms to keep track of overcollections. Yes, so if they are overcollected from interconnection customers, then there would be a mechanism to then refund that.
Okay, and is that contained in the tariff, or that's a recommendation from OPC?
That is a recommendation.
Okay, and then for flexible interconnection, do you believe that there's not enough in place now to have that be a viable path forward as opposed to sort of building out, if the building out costs are too high?
The flexible interconnection can decrease the need for more upgrades by more efficiently using the existing hosting capacity. The regulations, the COMAR regulations do technically allow for flexible interconnection, but it's just not something that we see very often, and so and we certainly don't see it to the extent that we're proposing in our
right. But is there something in the proposed tariffs that would either prevent or impede a flexible interconnection as an option?
The regulations themselves, no. But I think I think the regulations aren't enough to really push that forward, and I think we need more action from the utilities.
Okay, so but it's not, you're not asking for changes in the tariff, you're just sort of suggesting that, moving forward, this is an area of exploration.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I do have one question for People's Council. You've made a suggestion that for the MCAMP rider, for the Joint Exelon Utilities, that there should be we should be using the average cost of upgrades over the last 5 years. Do you have, or do we have, access to the data to come up with the number necessary for the rider? Or is that something that needs to be, do we need to get it?
Yeah, we would need to get that information. I don't think it's something that has been submitted in filings that's available.
Okay. Okay. Any additional questions? Thank you. All right, so let's start with, since item number 8 is the Potomac Edison Company, we will call the Potomac Edison Company to the stand.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Crystal Barnett, and I'm actually here on behalf of BGE and the Maryland Joint Exelon Utilities.
Oh.
And the way we had planned this, because originally we had all of the, Exelon Utilities together. So if it's okay, I'll start with the comments for staff and then move into PHI. Will address OPCs, and then we can field questions on all of them, if that's that. Oh, I'm so sorry. Apologies.
Two Potomacs. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Contasia Scott, here on behalf of the Potomac Edison Company. I'm joined by a couple of my colleagues who are able to respond to any technical questions that you may have. I guess we could, as PEPCO started to do, we could address staff's comments first and then maybe move to OPC's comments. I think for Potomac Edison, we're largely amenable to each of staff's comments. I think we only have one concern. Mr. Zuka could join me. It's about the administrative fee.
Sure.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Another exciting interconnection topic for today. So on the agreed, as Ms. Scott mentioned, all of staff's conditions, are a lot of what our process had planned to be. One quick thing, there's a lot of requirements for annual reports. We do feel like one annual report package is likely what makes sense here, and I think that that would likely be agreeable by all parties. The administrative fee, so just to give an overview of how we calculated that, we have a mix of existing employees that will be focusing their time on this. We are adding some new resources that will also be focused on this and some other topics. Our fees are based off an estimate of what the total amount of time and resources will be required to administer this program, divided by the expected amount of applications, and kind of divided by, so that's how we came up with those. The recommendation by staff is for us to keep track of all those costs and then do a reconciliation of sorts to make sure that kind of everything goes to zero. Where that's a little difficult is, again, some of those resources are shared. Somebody may spend hours on this, but that might not be their main focus. Another complication is that a lot of times we're working with developers on the project as a whole. So we're working on technical aspects of the process, perhaps billing of their fees for other things, and then also perhaps part of the MCAM. So it's really hard to tease out, like, well, did I talk to them for 2 hours and did we talk for 30 minutes about MCAM, an hour about community solar issues, and then 30 minutes about technical interconnection issues? So I think what the risk is that we may underreport, the true amount of time it takes to administer the program if we have to have a detailed listing of all of the hours and, and costs that are associated with it. And our concern, I think, is the same as many other parties, where we want to administer this program appropriately and set our fees fairly, but we want to make sure we avoid that those incremental costs get passed on to ratepayers who aren't interconnecting these facilities. So not a huge issue with the concept, as long as we have the allowance that, we may be using some, perhaps estimates of those costs and not be able to have the detailed reconciliation that staff is looking for.
Okay. Why don't you continue with your response to People's Council's filing as well?
Yeah. So, sorry. We have a plan, that we would potentially ask for recovery of accumulated unallocated costs in a rate case. That's not our plan, though. Our plan is to run this program so that, success means that we have a zero balance at any time. So we've set our fees based off of historical costs and estimates of actual projects going forward. So we've made our best judgment. Our engineers have gone through and said, these are how many projects we'd expect in a normal year, what they typically cost, use some cost estimates that would account for maybe higher material costs, and said this is the fee that we expect will get us to a zero balance at the end of the year. We're going to adjust as required every year to use that same methodology and then also incorporate whatever was unallocated from the previous year to adjust those fees up and down. Where we see the potential for asking for recovery in a rate case is if things aren't working as expected. So let's say things are kind of in a runaway situation where we are not able to increase the fees enough every year to bring down that balance. Now we have a large balance. We also have really large hosting capacity fees. So that's going to create a disincentive for any project to interconnect to our system, which is going to mean less fees are being paid, and that balance isn't going to be able to be driven down. Allowing us to roll that into rate base during a base rate case would reset it at zero, allow us to bring those fees back down, and hopefully open everything back up again. We don't necessarily have an issue with OPC's recommendation that we would then use that, kind of track that going forward, but it's not going to solve the problem. Now we have to incorporate that balance into the future fees. The fees aren't coming down. They're going to continue to stay as high as they were before to try to recover those costs. So ultimately, we don't have an issue. We can do what OPC is suggesting. We're just there's a concern that it may lead to continued higher hosting capacity fees and lower solar energy development in our territory.
Okay. All right, thank you. Questions for the Potomac Edison Company? No? Commissioner Satchman?
Okay, so unlike, I guess it's BGE, which is going to start at zero, you actually are going to calculate based on historical interconnection costs.
We've used a mix of historical costs and estimates for projects, current projects that are going to be built to create a fee that is in our tariff today.
Okay.
We've done that work.
And have you gone back? Do you calculate it over a 5-year period, as OPC is requesting?
Sounds like we use a 2-year period.
Okay. And how much of a heavy lift would it be to do it over a 5-year period? I mean, do you have the information?
Sounds like Matt Rosensteel, who's a manager of engineering, is going to help me with that one.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Matt Rosensteel, manager of engineering. So what we used was actually a sample size of historical projects that we've had over the past 2 years. We did not use every single project to be able to calculate the information. It's not something that we track every single project. Very similar to what I believe Exelon has talked about with not having the data readily available. We had to build the data. We have it, but it's in the form of our studies that we've completed and not necessarily in a spreadsheet format. You have to go into each individual study to determine how much that particular project was. So is it available? Could we do it for a 5-year period? Yes, we could, but it would be quite a heavy lift. It took us quite a bit of time to be able to put that information together.
Okay, and so you have it for the 2-year period. But do you have a sense of whether there would be much of a difference in numbers if you used 5-year versus 2-year based on your own experience?
We attempted, whenever we were looking at the sample size, to make sure that we pulled in different types of projects so that we could avoid having issues if we looked at a longer duration. Our intent is to come to a zero sum at the end of each year. So we did our best, using our best engineering judgment and looking at a statistical analysis to make sure that we had enough in comparison to the number of projects that we had in order to be able to come up with a zero-sum game at the end of the year.
Okay, but it's not a zero rate, so you are going to
Correct.
be, okay. But I guess my question to you is, if we were to ask you to go back 5 years, would you see a big difference in the number between 2 years and 5 years?
We would not expect to see a big difference.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Hoover.
So I don't know who from the company wants to answer this, but if we wait till you make a rate increase filing to true this up, is there a concern if there's a long period of time before you file such a rate case?
So just to be clear, we will true this up every year. So, we will adjust the rates every year in an attempt to true it up. So similar to how we may do reconciliation for a surcharge, we have a rate that we believe is going to collect the cost. It should be at zero, but inevitably it won't be, right? So when we're here next year to re-update our rates, if we undercollected and there's a balance, those rates are, everything else being equal, going to go up a little bit. And so the hope then is the next year we'd come back and we're zero. Perhaps we overshoot a little bit. There's a lot of unknowns here, but we are going to make that adjustment every year. Again, our hope is that we never come to you in a rate case and say, here's a bunch of these costs we need to recover. But we agree that ability needs to be there because this is a new program. We don't know exactly what we're going to run into. There is a potential for either way getting to a large positive or negative balance here, and that's a way that gives the commission the opportunity to look at zeroing out. And at that time, the commission can make a decision on, how those costs are recovered or whether there's a tracker of any kind going forward. We don't feel like a decision needs to be made today, and the commission should retain that flexibility to determine what to do at that time if something unforeseen happens.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Let's continue. Sorry. Oh.
They're good,
Okay.
so.
All right.
Well, okay.
We'll still be here.
So, Mr. Chairman, before the Exelon companies leave the podium, can somebody come back, please?
That was Potomac.
Oh, only Potomac Edison. So you're not representing the rest of Exelon. Oh, you're not representing any of them. Sorry. Yes. Too many Potomacs.
That's all right. We like Potomac. All right.
Is it safe?
Southern Maryland, yes.
Yes.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Presiding Chair and Chair Barve and members of the Commission, Damon Krieger on behalf of Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative. So just a couple points. First of all, SMECO has not set a $0 MCAM fee. So just to be clear, we are differentiated from the Exelon utilities in that respect, in that we did set a primary and secondary MCAM fee for this initial filing. And so it is not $0 per kilowatt. So just to clarify, and we did that based upon our best estimates using a 1-year period. We have a very small sample size, as you probably understand and appreciate. So we had basically 2 primary projects last year, and that's what we used for purposes of estimating this initial MCAM fee. But I'll say ditto to a lot of what Potomac Edison stated here, which is every year our expectation is that we will go through a reconciliation process just like we do with other surcharge mechanisms like MPower, and there will be puts and takes that ultimately arrive at a new fee that is based upon historical actuals that will then set the fees for the upcoming year. So very standard practice in terms of what we're accustomed to. Secondly, I'll just respond to one thing in the Office of People's Counsel comments, which is that there was a direct question to SMECO about whether or not its MCAM secondary fees apply to both commercial and residential customers. They do. They're universally applicable to all interconnecting customers, and in fact our filing indicates as such. So with each rate class there's an indication as to the applicable riders, and it indicates in our filing that the the new MCAM rider will apply to all classes of customers in that respect. And then finally I'll just say is that with respect to an effective date, I think there's probably some differences in terms of what the utilities have requested for an effective date. To the extent that the Commission approves our filing, we would appreciate an effective date that aligns with the first of the month, and that's for administrative reasons. So I think our preference would be May 1st, but April 1st would be fine too. And with that, we're available for any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Smeko? Commissioner Schlesman?
Just very quickly, in terms of staff's list of recommendations, are you okay with what they're asking?
We are. We reviewed them, and like Potomac Edison, our preference would be to have a single report, preferably that aligns with the annual filing to update the rate, so it's in a single location. But in terms of the list of conditions, we appreciate and are in line with those.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So where is the joint Exelon companies? Now it's your turn.
I'm sorry for that. I totally thought you said Pepco, so my apologies. But again, Crystal Barnett on behalf of BG and also on behalf of the Maryland Joint Exelon Utilities. I'm joined also, as I mentioned, by Matthew Seegers for PHI, and also on behalf of the Maryland Joint Exelon Utilities. We want to acknowledge the amount of significant work and collaboration that has been done by the parties leading up to today's hearing. We designed these tariffs to follow the MCAM regulations as set after evaluating many scenarios, and we believe that the proposed tariff best aligns with the regulation. I'd like to thank staff for the buck sheet and careful analysis and recommendation to accept our tariffs. I'm planning to respond to staff's recommendations, and Mr. Seegers will respond to OPC's recommendations. With regard to the 0 per kilowatt, for BGE, there have been 0 projects over a 5-year period that have increased hosting capacity. We have had no first movers. So staff's recommendation to accept our non-zero MCAMP proposal, the Exelon Utilities agree with staff's proposal, and we plan to submit an annual MCAM filing that updates all of the tariff rates on an annual basis, including the MCAMP hosting capacity fees, which is consistent with the filing. We will utilize the actual data from the prior calendar year as the proxy for the upcoming year. And we will, in our annual plan, update the non-zero MCAMP hosting capacity fee after we have first mover data that exists. So that's in relation to the 0 per dollar kilowatt. We accept the rest of staff's recommendations as were stated by DeAndre this morning. And I'm available for any questions with regard to the 0 per dollar kilowatt.
Okay. Commissioner Sushman?
Okay, so explain to me why it's been 0 over, it's just that you've had sufficient capacity, and so there are no interconnection costs because of that?
So to assist me, I'm going to bring Jason Manuel, who is the BGE Senior Manager of Revenue Policy.
Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jason Manuel, BG Manager of Regulatory. So all of the projects in the primary space have been deemed subsequent movers. They have not required upgrades.
Okay, and
First mover.
It's because the first mover paid for it. Is that?
In the past, yes.
Right.
Under the calls or pays model, yes.
Right. So somebody came in, paid for the upgrades, and then you've had a whole bunch of free riders over the last 5 years.
I don't know about a whole bunch, but
so over the past 5 years, those interconnecting have all been free riders.
Well, here's what I would say is when it comes to first movers, the data set that we have available is starts 2025 good faith estimates. There are no first mover projects in that data set. If you go prior to this current data set, we just don't have the data available to inform whether there were in fact first movers or not.
Okay, so even if you wanted to find the data for the first mover, you don't have that data?
The data, as we include in our supporting work papers, the data that we have supports a 0 rate.
Okay,
there are no first mover projects in our good faith estimate data set.
Okay, so there have never been any
Can't
first...
say that there have never been. I'm sure at some point there were, but we don't know. The data that we have is the current good faith estimate data we have today. Prior historical data, as we noted in our work papers, we just don't have that. So if we were to follow OPC's recommendation, use a 5-year average, we would say
You'd still
the
have
first
0.
4 years we don't have the data,
All right.
and the last year we have the data set, and there are no first movers. So the data that we have is supporting a 0 rate.
Okay. So
That does not mean that second movers and first movers don't pay anything. Under MCAM, if there is a first mover, they will pay their pro rata share. And in the future, we will include those unallocated costs in our rate, in the
yeah,
next
so
rate filing.
explain to
All
me how
subsequent-
that will work. They'll come in. There will be 0 costs allocated to them when they first interconnect. How will you reach them?
So if we have a first mover under the MCAM regulations, they will pay a pro rata share of that project cost. They will. Subsequent movers, non-first movers, they pay just like they do today. Causer pays 100% of the project cost. Kayak. So there aren't any unallocated costs to include in a non-zero rate.
I guess I'm still
For
not.
primary.
Okay, so let's say we approve the tariffs, and you've got a project that wants to interconnect. Under the tariff, they would be paying what?
If it's a subsequent mover, a non-first mover, meaning we're not increasing our hosting capacity fee, 100% of the project costs. Kayak, just like they do today. If it's a first mover, pro rata share. So if they only need 3 megawatts and we have to build a 10 megawatt feeder, they'll pay 30% of that cost.
Okay, so then it's not 0.
The hosting capacity fee is 0.
Oh, okay.
But the charge on that first customer's bill is not going to be 0.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions about the
I don't
zero rate?
think so. We're looking forward to hearing
Thank you.
the response to the People's Council's filing.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Matthew Seegers on behalf of the Joint Exelon Utilities. I would just like to start where Mr. Manuel left off because I think there's been a little confusion in terms of whether or not there's going to be any cost responsibility shared by what is called a first mover. So in year 1 of MCAM, a customer who is driving and by customer, an interconnection customer, a customer who is driving a interconnection upgrade that increases hosting capacity, as Mr. Manuel indicated, is going to pay their portion of that amount of the hosting capacity upgrade. What the dollar per kilowatt fee is intended to recover is the remaining costs, and that is what would be 0 during the first year of MCAM. But that is something that the utilities would want to update as quickly as possible once we have the necessary data. And as we indicated, the reason that the fee is 0 right now is because we simply don't have a large enough data sample to make an accurate assessment. And if the fee is set too high, that could serve as a disincentive to a first mover who wants to interconnect and get their generation on the grid. And also from a practical perspective, it would also hinder our implementation of MCAM, because if we have to then go back and then try and calculate a fee that's based on the data, one, it would have a lot of assumptions included, so we couldn't say how accurate it would be. But also, it would delay the implementation of MCAM, because then we would have to come back and make a filing, and the commission would have to approve that rate. So we believe that the better approach is to set the fee at 0, wait until we have some actual information and data in order to base an accurate fee on that, and then update that in our next MCAM filing. But I do want to make that clear that I think there's been a little confusion about whether or not there is going to be a charge on the first mover. There will be. there just will not be a fee associated with the remaining costs that that first mover is associated with. So before I move on, I can stop there and see if there's any questions on that, because I know this has been the largest topic of discussion this morning.
No, you can continue.
Okay, thank you. Just moving on to OPC's next point, where they have asked for, in our next MCAM filings, an accurate and transparent methodology for the primary voltage MCAM fee that reflects the cost of upgrading hosting capacity on the per kW basis. The Exelon utilities are going to be including our supporting work papers with our tariff filing, which we anticipate will meet all of the needs that are specified by the Office of People's Counsel. In terms of a true-up mechanism that OPC raised in their comments, we agree in concept with a true-up mechanism. And the way that MCAM is going to work is that once we have enough of the data, we're going to be implementing the MCAM fee. And then any amount that is not covered by the MCAM fee is going to be placed into a regulatory liability. And then we are going to take the amount from that regulatory liability, and we're going to track any subsequent payments that come in from developers, the subsequent movers, and then all of that is going to be trued up in our next rate case. We think this is the better way to go about doing it, but we do agree that the MCAM fee needs to be updated every single year, and that is what our intent is going to be. For the next two issues, about the OPC's recommendation on the report from the interconnection work group and the development of hourly dynamic interconnection limit offering for primary voltage. We feel that these are beyond the scope of what we are talking about here. What MCAM is that it's a cost allocation methodology. There are other venues for where we can tackle these other issues, other work groups, and we feel that that would be more appropriate. And we're more than happy to have those discussions with the Office of People's Counsel in those other venues. And finally, well, actually, let me stop there. And I believe that covers all of OPC's recommendations. So we have a whole number of subject matter experts from both BGE and PHI who are available if you have any questions.
Thank you. All right, are there any questions for the company? Commissioner Suchman.
So just to be clear, at some point, if you are running into a problem with cost recovery, are you going to be coming back to us and asking for cost recovery, or is this going to sort of because it's going to be in this regulatory liability? I guess the question is, is the intention to keep it separate from your rate cases?
I believe the answer to your question is no, Commissioner Suchman. At some point, we would be seeking cost recovery of any amount that is not of the regulatory liability that is not covered by the MCAM fees that got established. But let me bring up my revenue requirements expert, who can probably go into more detail.
Okay,
on it.
thank you. Because the reason I'm asking is there have been suggestions that that the intention is to have a zero balance every year, and I mean that would be a really good thing, to try to keep it away from ratepayers, who are not, shouldn't be responsible for picking up the tab. And I guess the question is, how do you anticipate it working, and how do you anticipate what you would do if it's not working?
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Matt Bonikowski on behalf of PEPCO, Manager of Revenue Requirements. So, similar to what you've heard from Potomac Edison, we have the same intention here. Our goal is to recover upgrade costs and MCAM fees from developers, and our metric of success is having a $0 balance that would fall into base distribution rates. So, To the extent that we are under or over recovered in a given year, our intent is to try and true that up through the next year's MCAM rates, those dollar per kW fees. What the rate case inclusion is really serving for us is a backstop. You know, similar to what you heard for Potomac Edison, if things start to go off the rails, we're concerned that you could have growing balances that could increase those dollar per kW interconnection fees to the point where it disincentivizes new developers for coming onto the system. And we think it's important to have a backstop there to consider within a rate case whether some of those costs are appropriate for alternate recovery. But to your question, Commissioner Suchman, those annual filings that we would be submitting under MCAM are gonna have information in them showing what our under or over recovered position is, because we'll be seeking to include that in the next year's rate. So that's really the opportunity where if we see things starting to go off the rails, we'll have an annual opportunity to try and correct before we even get to a rate case.
Okay, and are you requesting that we give you that regulatory certainty now? Or is it that you're just kind of giving us a heads up that it's your intention to come to us in a rate case to seek recovery?
So I think the certainty would be helpful. We have laid out in our application how we plan to handle the accounting treatment for this, and the facts that we, as a backstop, would seek to include costs within distribution rate cases if it comes to that. So I do think that approval of that cost recovery construct that we have outlined in the filing is what we're seeking.
Okay, but if we were not to approve that, what you're telling us is that it would be your intention in the next rate case to seek recovery, cost recovery, if this goes off the rails.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Actually,
Yes, Commissioner Hoover.
so isn't your situation a little more complicated because of the multi-year rate plans? I mean, how are you going to factor this into that?
Yeah, it definitely interplays. So I'll say two things on that, right? One, I want to be careful how much I say about the current case that we're litigating, but in concept, just sequencing, and speaking only for PEPCO, that rate case right now doesn't consider the MCAM cost sharing application. So it would really be a question in the next forecasted rate construct. I can't guarantee this, but my expectation is our goal with this tariff is to have a $0 rate. So under forecasted rate making, we would forecast exactly that we would come and in forecasted rate making have a $0 balance that flows through rates. I think if we were to fall back into traditional rate making, that's where you might see some MCAM dollars coming through, because we're no longer going to be projecting that next year we're going to true this up and have a $0 balance. There would be a balance that exists that would naturally appear in the company's revenue requirement.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I see the People's Council has risen again. You have some additional comments to offer?
I just wanted, Mark Bird, Office of People's Council, I just wanted to offer, hopefully, a point of clarification with respect to how costs are allocated between first movers and subsequent movers under the tariff, and or under the MCAM framework. And so for first movers, the costs are directly allocated on a pro rata basis to the upgrade costs are allocated directly to them on a pro rata basis. It's the subsequent interconnection customers who would previously be considered free riders who are now supposed to take on the unallocated portions of the upgraded costs, and it's those unallocated portions that currently the Exelon utilities are providing a zero dollar payment structure, and so I think OPC's points still stands, which is even if the primary movers or the first movers are paying their are paying their pro rata share, it's these unallocated portions that OPC emphatically argues that ratepayers should not be considered a backstop for.
Okay. Thank you. I see our technical staff is here. Do you have anything final that you wanted to offer?
Well, actually, I have a question for staff, but I don't know if Mr. Wilson's the right guy to answer this. And it relates to this issue about, we'll try and adjust the fee to make sure we don't overcollect or undercollect, but ultimately it'll get decided in a rate case. And so my question is, do you have any concerns at either end of the spectrum? The situation where a rate case filing isn't made for some number of years, or the situation with the Exelon companies that have these multi-year rate plans where there are budgets and forecasts and factoring that into that process.
Well, first of all, we'll be seeing the status of the program for each company every year with their annual filings. So we'll have some notice of areas that may be of concern going forward. And I would say that the balances compared to the overall costs being collected and stuff, the unrecovered balances that are going to be going into this regulatory liability account will probably collect, well, that'll be the focus on the annual reviews to try to make sure that that ends up being zero over time. It shouldn't, well, we'll have to see how it works going forward. We can always stop doing this if it appears that it's not working. There may be a time period in the future when, due to the end of tax benefits, that the number of interconnections starts decreasing. So that'll be something we'll have to look for, not look forward to, but to look for. For multi-year rate plans, I believe the answer was correct that they're going to assume a zero balance in the futures. So I don't think that would be a problem for those companies.
Okay.
And I would note that adoption of the MCAM mechanism for this, it serves not just a way to allocate costs to the secondary users. What normally happens is, on certain circuits, you never get anybody trying to interconnect to them because there's no hosting capacity available. This is a way of freeing up those for upgrades and future use. So that's one of the main benefits of this.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So we are going to take items 8, 9, and 10 under advisement. So we can, Mr. Secretary, if we could just include that in the minutes. And we will continue moving on for our administrative agenda to item number 11, which is the Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative. They filed a compliance filing regarding untariffed lighting bracket charges.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Brandon Bowser on behalf of staff. On March 2nd, 2026, SMECO submitted a compliance filing, as you noted, in response to the Commission's December 17th, 2025 letter order that, among other things, directed SMECO to consult with staff regarding untariffed lighting charges applied to the bills of Schedule SL, or Street Lighting Service, customer members, and submit a subsequent filing to address the untariffed charges. Staff, in the course of its analysis, discovered that the untariffed charges were being applied for lighting bracket lengths that were 6 to 10 feet in length. SMECO's Schedule SL tariff language that was in effect at the time of staff's discovery, which was last autumn, did not authorize charges for bracket lengths of 6 to 10 feet and instead specified that a monthly charge applied, but only to bracket lengths 12 to 18 feet in length. More detailed information about this discovery can be found in Attachment A to the Buck Sheet, which was originally submitted as Attachment D under Buck Sheet RR 3582. I have included it again for your ease of reference to the matter at hand. In accordance with the Commission's December 17th letter order, SMECO consulted with staff to develop 3 proposed options for the Commission's consideration to remedy the untariffed charges. Staff and SMECO met virtually on February 2nd, 2026 to discuss the matter and review SMECO's proposed options. The company explained that its analysis revealed that the untariffed charges were isolated to approximately 300 street lighting brackets across approximately 40 accounts over a 15-year period. This represents a total of $8,900 in untariffed charges. The options proposed by SMECO for remediation are as follows, as detailed in the Buck Sheet. Option 1, do nothing. Under this option, no specific action to remedy the untariffed charges is proposed. SMECO explains that the street lighting bracket is a necessary component to furnish street lighting service, and SMECO states that a credit or refund issued to an individual lighting customer or the Schedule SL customer class would result in unjust enrichment and a subsidy from other customer members. Option 2, one-time bill credit. Under this option, SMECO proposes to issue a one-time bill credit to all affected customer member accounts to return the $8,900 in untariffed charges. The company stated that it could complete this refund by May 1st, 2026. Option 3, class credit. Under this option, SMECO proposes to credit the $8,900 in untariffed charges to the Schedule SL customer class in SMECO's next base distribution rate case. SMECO indicated that its preference was for option 1, given its concerns about avoiding unjust enrichment of Schedule SL customer members. Staff does not share this concern because SMECO's tariff in effect throughout the 15-year period explicitly limited the bracket charges to those 12 to 18 feet in length. Under Public Utilities Article Section 4-202, any electric company tariff must contain its rates and charges, terms and conditions, and policies and practices in providing regulated services. Staff therefore concludes that there is no unjust enrichment because the tariff did not state that such charges were applicable. Staff notes that SMECO's current Schedule SL tariff language has been revised to establish that bracket charges are applicable to all bracket lengths ranging from 6 to 18 feet. This revision was authorized by the Commission in the December 17th letter order that I referenced earlier and took effect on January 1st, 2026. Staff recommends that the Commission accept Option 2, one-time bill credit, and directs SMECO to issue one-time bill credits to Schedule SL customer members that received the untariffed charges by May 1st, 2026. Staff notes that the affected customer members were identified in the course of SMECO's analysis, and staff asked SMECO what the estimated level of effort would be to facilitate Option 2. SMECO responded that it estimated approximately 10 to 15 labor hours would be necessary. As such, because the customer members and their fixtures have already been identified by SMECO, the estimated level of effort is not unreasonable, and because the Schedule SL tariff language in effect during the period of SMECO's application of the untariffed charges did not authorize the monthly bracket charge imposed by SMECO, staff concludes that Option 2 is the most appropriate option. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for staff? I have a few for you. You were able, in working with the company, to identify these customers. Were any of them contacting either the company or even the commission with concerns about these charges.
It is staff's understanding that that did not occur with staff directly. For the company, I defer to the company on that question.
Do we know if any of them, through the process of identifying them, have come to expect a refund?
Not to staff's knowledge.
All right, and just, the numbers here, we're not talking about no millions of dollars here. So what's the, if we're talking about 40 accounts, $8,900. If the chairman was here, he could do this in his head. As an attorney, I can't do so. So give me an estimate as to what you think the number would be. What are we talking about on average for a refund?
Well, that would be $8,900 across 300 lighting fixtures across 40 accounts. So I think simple math would dictate you would take the 8,900 divided by the 40 accounts, which I can calculate that very quickly for you, actually. If only we had technology, wouldn't that be great? According to this back of the envelope calculation, that would be about $222.50 per account.
That's a shopping spree. What are we talking about? Residential only, or is this a mix of residential and commercial class customers?
Schedule SL customer members are typically commercial scale customers. Area lighting is, as I understand the company's tariff, that's the one that's more residential focused. So these would be commercial grade customers, local governments, county governments, and those sorts.
Okay. All right. Thank you. No other questions? Good afternoon. Good morning again.
Good morning still. Damon Krieger again on behalf of Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative. So first of all, this has been a very collaborative effort between the cooperative and staff, so really appreciate the collaboration to get us to this point in time. As noted, our lighting schedule changes were approved by the commission several months ago, and so this is really the unresolved issue related to the single bracket charge. That we readily admitted before, we admit today, we made a mistake. We had a bracket range that was in place for many years. We updated it in practice, and we failed to update the tariff to add the extra fee that were applicable for that specific charge. The options were as specified by staff. Our preference remains option one, which is do nothing, and the rationale, again, as stated by staff, is that we believe there would be a resulting unjust enrichment. The reality is that these customers had lights, they're visible. You can look outside, you see your lights. They don't float in midair. You need a bracket. And so it's reasonable to expect, if you're a lighting customer, that you're going to have to pay for a bracket. And so to the extent that the commission requires us to go forward with the option two, which is the bill credit, we are prepared to do so. We have worked out the administrative process to manually provide that credit to customers. It's relatively de minimis on a gross amount. We're talking about $9,000 as the presiding chair indicated. So it's not a lot of money, but it is still a process. And at the end of the day, our customer members, we're a nonprofit, would ultimately be subsidizing this group of customers as a result of issuing that bill credit. So again, the real crux of the matter is, was a benefit conferred? Yes, it was. They had a bracket. These customers had a bracket. Did we make a mistake? Yes. Is it unreasonable for a customer in this class that had a light to expect to pay for a bracket charge? Yes, it's reasonable for them to have expected to pay for a charge because you look outside and the bracket's there. It has to have a bracket. The lights don't float. So our preference remains the option one, which is the do nothing option at this point. With that, available for any questions.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for the company? Chairman, Commissioner Hoover, is you.
So it was mentioned that these are not residential customers; these are commercial customers. But I mean, give me a little more descriptive of what types of customers they are.
It's a mix. So we have aerial lighting and street lighting. So the street lighting are predominantly local government customers. Aerial lighting could be residential. You could have a backyard light that the SMECO provides for that residential property. Could be parking lots in a auto establishment, something like that. So there's a mix. I can't tell you the breakdown as between the 3,000 brackets between residential and commercial. I don't know that.
But I guess my concern is, with your suggested option of doing nothing, I suspect that these customers would probably think, well, this money's better in my pocket than yours, even though, you're all members and you're a little different than if you were an IOU. Do we run the risk of, some local government saying, hey, we got cheated out of this money that we were owed by our utility?
So the response would be, it's a de minimis amount, so I don't.
I understand that,
from a
but
local
again,
government
their attitude
perspective-
may be, better in my pocket than in yours.
Appreciate that. And so, yes, de minimis amount, and we haven't received any complaints. We haven't received, so obviously the filing has been public.
Sure.
We have not contacted these customers yet, so they are not aware of it. So if, to the extent the commission requires us to move forward with the credit, we will alert the customers that the credit is coming and what it amounts to. It will have to be an individualized calculated credit because, and that's the manual process, because one customer could have three lighting fixtures, another could have 5, and it differs by account. So it is a very manual process. But we haven't received any comments from lighting customers about this. And again, you look outside, you see a light, there's a bracket. It has to be.
Okay, thank you.
Morning, sir. In terms of doing nothing, couldn't that potentially send the wrong message to other utilities? And granted, I know SMECO somewhat is unique, but if SMECO gets away with charging untariffed charges and nothing happens, what's to say, Mr. Seegers isn't saying, hey, why don't we start doing that? And I'm obviously saying that in jest because I can see Mr. Seegers and he's laughing, but doesn't that send the wrong message?
I won't speak for Mr. Seegers. And appreciate the precedential aspect of this. We do think it's a case by case analysis, and the cooperatives has to be considered for what it is in this context. And I do think, regardless of the case, to the extent that a benefit was conferred on the particular customer, it would not be equitable for that customer to pay nothing for a service that they actually received. So appreciate, we readily admit it was not in the tariff. We should have upgraded the range of brackets. We didn't.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you,
And
Mr. Chair.
actually, for staff, you're suggesting that you go ahead and require this one-time credit. I guess the argument I'm hearing from SMECO is that it's not really worth the time and effort to do this because it's so little money. Does staff have a thought about that?
Thank you, Commissioner. That's an excellent question. Well, we understand that the amount is de minimis. There is the argument that the customers have been identified in the course of the analysis. We know which lighting fixtures this affects. We know which accounts are affected. And we know, as the company stated, that the tariff did not indicate that these charges should be applicable throughout the duration that that tariff language was in effect. So I think that, the argument becomes to your point about the precedent, to Commissioner McLean's point about the precedent of if you know how to remedy the situation, the amount is de minimis, and as SMECO stated in its comments, or its filing, that the labor hours 10 to 15 are also, I would argue, de minimis. It would be a good faith effort to return those dollars to the affected customer members. I worry about the precedent, just like Commissioner McLean said.
We did have an option 3, which wasn't really articulated here because neither party is really advocating for it, but that is to just credit the entire class of customers with the $8,900 as part of our next rate case proceeding. So that eliminates the manual. I don't want to call it tedious because it's not. It's relatively minimal hours, although the individual that has to do it may think it's tedious. But it would eliminate that task.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none? All right, then I will make a motion to accept the option 2, one-time bill credit as detailed in the March 2nd, 2026 filing, and direct the cooperative to issue a one-time bill credit to Schedule SL customer members that receive the untariffed charges as discussed in staff's comments dated March 5th, 2026, and that this should occur by May 1st, 2026. I'd start the call with Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoover.
Aye.
Chairman Barve.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved. And seeing no other matters before